The Dentist by Liquid Swan. I saw her standing in the doorway, arms crossed. Her red dress hung like Christ. I could hardly stand to look at it. The egg flipper with the silicone grip felt nice in my hand. I grabbed the empty bottle of Jack Daniels and hucked it across the room towards her, and it flew right through like a ghost, smashing into countless pieces as it hit the fireplace in the sunken living room. She was never there. This wasn't my house. There was a knock at the door. I could smell her again. An older woman, a troll from the internet. I could smell death on her. I took my egg flipper and ran towards the door. Reaching into my pocket, I realized I was not wearing any pants. My jacket was laying near the door, covered in shards of broken glass from the bottle thrown earlier. I felt inside the pocket, and there it was. Bear spray. I grabbed a chair and threw it through the large kitchen window, smashing glass everywhere, and the woman shrieked. I made my way through the hole and soaked the woman in bear spray. I could hear her coughing and choking on the relaxing mists. I kept spraying, chasing her down the sidewalk while she pleaded for mercy. I yelled that the spice must flow. Soon the can was empty. I sprinted down the street towards the 7-Eleven, leaving her in my dust and spice, writhing for air. I chuckled inside, but this was simply God's will. The store was surrounded on the exterior by a few dozen youths engaged in a rap battle or something. I ignored them while walking in my underpants and shirt with a bow tie, which they mocked by calling me Old Uncle Pennybags. Anyways, I entered the store. The smell of overcooked wieners penetrated my nostrils and I nearly vomited. I bought a few tins of Zyn nicotine pouches and walked out. Soon I found myself accosted and surrounded by the exterior youths. They were sucking through their teeth, which was normally an intimidating move, but I will not be intimidated, and I immediately punched their leader in the face and all of them started attacking me. I was on the ground being kicked and beaten, but remained atop the leader. I bashed him good and took a lot of his teeth. Not all of them, but most. I was badly beaten and I was being kicked while rising from the pile. I directed my attention to the next candidate, second in command, and was soon on the ground with him, bashing his face while the rest were kicking me. Soon the man was asleep, and I would move on to the next, and the next, and the next. It took a while for them to figure it out, but I was able to make about 7 of them go nighty-night before the remainder scurried off. I chased one down as he begged to be left alone, apologizing profusely. I jumped on him and took his teeth too. A dentist has to eat. I popped a few Zyns and ran into the forest lining the riverside park, and laying down in some tall grass, I quickly fell asleep as the sun set. I awoke in the night, moon shining bright overhead, partial clouds. A family of raccoons were looking at me in the distance. I got up and sprinted towards them. They tried to run, but one was too slow, and I punched it solidly in the rear. It squealed and ran like a coward. I am a big, strong man. Remaining awake, I prowled through the underbrush, looking for my next chance at justice. 2 police officers were on patrol just outside the entrance to the Riverside Park. I casually approached them, half naked. One of them noticed me, and as I got closer, they started asking questions like, why was I all beaten and bruised? I told them I had special powers, but I would need their guns for the purposes of justice. They refused. I told them they could do this the hard way or the easy way, after which they drew their pistols. I thanked them for the cooperation. They chuckled. Sensing a moment of weakness, I dove for the weapons, grabbing one in each hand. The cops fired their guns, but missed me. I turned the guns towards each other and said I would spare whoever shot the other. They both shot each other at the same time. Now I had 2 guns, and so I ran back into the tree line. I dug a hole about 6 inches deep and buried the guns there, covering the hole with fall leaves. Even if they found the guns, they would never find me. I already burned off all my fingerprints. I heard the raccoons again, but they were wise to keep their distance this time. I made my way to the interstate, hoping to thumb a ride. Unfortunately, no one wanted to pick up a dirty man with no pants, covered in blood. I ran out into traffic instead until cars were forced to stop. I pretended to be a madman, just pretending, and as traffic returned to normal, I hopped onto the back of a semi-trailer. The cool fall breeze of Chicago felt heavenly in my blood-tangled hair as I traveled at highway speeds, holding on for survival to the back of this trailer. I got off at the next truck stop and went inside. A portly figure with the name tag Pedro stood at the counter, asking if he could take my order. No way, no pants, no service. I picked up the chair and threw it through the glass cabinet filled with food because I didn't have $3.75. I grabbed a sandwich and a drink and got the hell out of there. The sandwich was a little crunchy because of the little bits of glass, but it was okay. I took a swig of the cream soda and took it out and poured it all over my hair to try to clean up the blood. It seemed to work, so I took leave of the place and headed towards Gary, Indiana. I hailed a taxi and got in. The cabbie was a bit disturbed by my look, so I said I was jumped, which is true but also false, and I would pay him if he could take me to my bank in Gary. He seemed fine with this. I popped a few more in, and the road ahead started to look more like gray noodles interspaced and stretched out hot dog buns with mustard spilled all over them. The car seemed to transform into a slip and slide, and I couldn't remain upright in my seat. I asked the cabbie what the hell he lubed his seats with, and he became incredibly fearful. I told him not to be afraid. I was just curious about the slippery seats. When we arrived, I literally slipped out of the back of the seat onto the ground and ran to the bank. I didn't have my card, so I waited. Eventually, a guy walked up to the ATM, and I said, "I will take $60, please," and the man declined. Strange. So I grabbed the man by his collar and took him to the cabbie. I said my card was declined, and it might take a minute to get my money back, but to hold tight. I told the man I will take $60, or his teeth, and then also take $60. He refused. Strange. Pride cometh before the fall. Soon his teeth fell like fall leaves on the autumn pavement, and he was napping in a shallow puddle of his own blood. I took my licks too, but I also took my $60, giving it to the cabbie, who watched the entirety unfold. He took the money and drove away. I headed to the beach. I could see the lake as I climbed the last dune. I sprinted towards the water and had a nice relaxing swim. The dried blood flowed off me and made a nice stain surrounded me in the water. I scrubbed off the bits and bobs which now covered me and walked out squeaky clean. In the distance, it must have been miles, I could see the woman in the red dress again. I sprinted towards her. With each step, I gained, and with each other step, she was dragged away from me. As fast as I would run, she would get further away. I eventually passed out from exhaustion. I awake, face down on the beach, mouth filled with sand. I was surrounded by old television sets from the 80s or 90s or 70s. I wasn't sure. Their power cords were all strung together like a daisy chain, creating a sort of fenced-in area where I was sleeping, like pallbearers who just lowered a corpse into the grave. Getting up, I noticed I was completely alone. There was a pile of magazines on top of one of the sets, its cover flapping open and shut in the breeze. It was the Sears catalog from Christmas 1986. It had flipped to the page where the advertising was for guns for young boys. Based, I thought. But was it based? Or was it a meme meant to distract from our suffering? To make us all slaves to the system no matter who holds power? Well, maybe not guns, but certainly someone paid for this magazine from so long ago. Who put it here? It's rather unsophisticated, but I suppose it did its work in the day. Certainly, little has changed in man since. Leaving the scene, I could see no other way but through the eyes of animals. Birds were possibly an answer to this riddle. How many TVs could one bird carry? Perhaps fewer than a single TV, which means the birds must have been working in large teams, like strings tied to a bunch of seagulls, just like James and the Giant Peach. But I don't see any seagulls here. This is a lake, I guess. So there should be lake gulls, but that wouldn't make any sense. Why would lake gulls be flying around with a bunch of old TV sets? It had to be seagulls. But where were they? Maybe they were in the TVs, sleeping or nesting or something, whatever birds do. Grabbing a big rock, I walked back to the TVs. I smashed open the TVs carefully, gingerly, so I wouldn't disturb the seagulls. The screens exploded with a big pop. Oh God, what have I done? I might have injured the poor birds, but there were no birds inside. Just wires and junk and a bunch of smashed up crap and sand. But alas, the mystery was solved. They clearly would hold the wires to carry the TVs, so the seagulls must be somewhere else nearby. Looking around, I saw a large Negro man in the distance, doing some stretches, it seemed like, and maybe having a picnic, but I was not sure. I sprinted towards him as fast as I could. He started to yell at me as I insisted he tell me where he hid the seagulls that brought all the TVs to me on the beach. He said I was a madman, of all things, and to get away from his picnic. I was incessant, however. I demanded he reveal the location of the mysterious birds, or he would pay the teeth price. He looked confused. I told him I'm a big, strong man. He first talked us down from a violent conflict, saying he wasn't finna havin' violence today. He said Carl down the road knew where the seagulls was at. He told me the address. He was lying, though, because I knew the address, and it was Michael Jackson's house from his childhood near the abandoned high school. I told him so, but he insisted. After a short scuffle, I made him pay the teeth price and sent him to a nighty-night. I headed towards the address in the hopes of maybe I'd find the seagulls on the way. Soon I was met by a squadron of youths who wished to extort me for financial gain. However, I had no money, so I collected their teeth and continued towards the house. Finding it boarded up along with no trespassing signs, I decided I never would violate the holy site, so I circled the block on foot a few times before realizing how silly I was. You don't find seagulls this far inland. This meant that the seagulls must have subcontracted the TV set job to a more inland species like eagles or hawks. I couldn't be certain, but I knew it had to be one or the other, as everybody knows that hawks and eagles don't work together. I was searching for eagles when a white SUV with tinted black windows pulled alongside me, and bullets started flying. I was hit several times, but only flesh wounds and grazes. I ran up to the side of the vehicle and grabbed the door handle. The driver attempted to pull away, but I pulled him through the window and started to extract my fee. Dentists have bills to pay. The doors opened up and the passengers started to run off in all directions. But who put them up to this? Seagull assassins? No, that wouldn't make any sense. Maybe it was the cops? But they were dead. What could it be? It must be a seagull competitor. The raccoons? Trash pandas? I would have to find out. So I headed back to the TVs on the beach. Back at the beach, there was no one else around. The big man was gone, but he left behind his picnic. I grabbed a few peanut butter sandwiches, noting that the peanut butter was acclaimed to be invented by a black man. Praise that man. The soul rejoices at mashed nuts on bread. The TVs were gone. Blast those pesky seagull-employed eagles or hawks. No sign of the glass or wires either. Quick cleanup. That isn't normal ops. They must have had dozens of operators to pull this one off, without a trace. Truly unbelievable. They've been following me for years. But wait, there is a trail of blood leading down the beach towards another access point. I approached the blood and stuck my fingers in it and gave it a sniff. It smells like old motor oil. The blood leads right to a 5-gallon pail of motor oil. Strange way to store this blood. I opened up the pail and found it with a few liters of black, foul-smelling blood that smelled like used motor oil. Who collects blood like this? What a weird thing. Right on the beach? But it's probably my blood. That was stolen while I was sleeping. The black tarry blood tastes like metal and oil, but I finish off the whole thing. I don't feel so good. Probably because the seagulls or raccoons or their accomplices took too much of my blood. I can see another pail further up. I drank the remaining blood that smelled exactly like used motor oil, and the hopes of my life force would be restored. I feel delirious. I can't walk straight. I vomit excessively all over the beach. I stumble and fall into the sand face first. Fucking seagulls. I am a big, strong man.